So this is one of our programs that we've investigated and found to be effective, and it's shown quite a lot of interest actually worldwide. And so it's really nice to come locally and talk to people about it. We did a bit of training with our iSolve project over the past few years, so this is probably the last workshop I'll probably do for the area here, but I'm sure that other people will be trained up in these programs and will be able to contribute to presenting them in your local area in the future. So we want more experts involved in that part of it as well. So introducing the program, so it's only a couple of hours today, but I just want to talk to you about really briefly about the evidence about falls. I know that we have in the room many people who understand many of these concepts already, but challenging balance to prevent falls is such a key one. We'll talk about what is LiFE. Because I'm doing the talking, I'll talk a bit about the research, and also I'm very interested in the concepts underpinning the LiFE program in the way that it works and the way that we teach it. Because I think if we understand that, then it's easier for us to understand the approaches we might use in getting people to make it habitual and to keep doing it. So some ideas about teaching the LiFE program. If we have time, I'll look at the planning and recording tools, although you do have them in there. And then we're going to do a short section at the end, which we did in our iSolve project at each workshop, and I found useful now in other workshops. And that's to think about what you've learned today and how you might, if you intend to, or how you might think you might implement it into your practice and share some ideas amongst the group. So that's basically what we'll cover today. The trainer's manual will basically cover what I'm presenting today in more depth and a bit more detail. And the participant manual has the LiFE activities and a bit about the principles in them for your participants. So why balance? Balance, I've realised, is one of those things that's poorly understood, and it's such a crucial element along with lower limb strength in preventing falls. And each review that we do, systematic review, and even the latest one that's going to come out, strengthens that evidence that balance is such a core thing. But most people don't get that they can improve their balance. They don't quite, we've kind of got the idea of doing cardio and we need to walk. We some of us understand about strength training, but most of us don't get that. Can we actually improve balance? But we can. So it's getting that idea across to our participants is important. And of course we know that it's only about 10% of older people that do any strength training, and even less balance. So we've got a lot of work out there to do to integrate this into people's ideas. And of course it's difficult to sustain. And look, this isn't the only program that's effective, but I believe that it gives a choice for people and strategies to maximise adoption and sustain engagement, because we found that people who did do the LiFE program, that there was a better engagement in the longer term than a regular structured program. That doesn't mean that a regular structured program isn't a good thing, and not everyone will do LiFE. Some people like to do exercises 3 times a week, and that's what they've done, and they will always do that. Maybe they could enhance their balance with some LiFE activities, perhaps their resume about doing that, but no, it's not for everybody. But we didn't give people a choice in our randomised trial, of course. A key component, as I've said, is balance, and some of the evidence that's coming out, the kinds of things that we need to do are exactly the kinds of things that we put into any of these falls prevention programs. Things like reducing our base of support, moving our centre of mass to our limits of stability, reducing the need for upper limb support as we're doing to challenge our balance, and involving our calf muscles and ankle muscles. So the ideas are kind of obvious, aren't they? That was our, I think we put this as one of your suggested things to read. This was the publication in the British Medical Journal that we did, that showed that we compared LiFE, our structured program, and a control group. Our control group actually had a gentle exercise that really didn't challenge balance. And unfortunately at the end of it, some people liked the gentle exercise program and wanted to keep doing it. And I wasn't very comfortable about that. never do that again. They'd get nothing next time. And our LiFE program was effective. The structured program wasn't, but I do believe it was trending towards significant, and if we'd had more people, I think it would have achieved that as well. But LiFE came up on a whole range of measures. So we had a 31% reduction of falls, in rate of falls, and the structured program had a 19% reduction. I don't like to compare one against the other. But LiFE improved balance and balance confidence, and the higher level, sensitive levels of balance it was particularly strong in. It also improved measures of functional capacity, participation, energy expenditure, and perceived overall health status. So I was very excited when it had those functional outcomes. So the idea of functional exercise may have some other outcomes that are very useful for people. So the functional capacity was measured by the late life function index, which is like an ADL measure, and the participation measure was the late life disability index, which was about the kinds of things that you do, the roles that you have in life, and I always think working in falls prevention really is about not just keeping people safe and protecting them from falls, but enabling them to do the things that they need to do to get out and be part of their community. So I think for me, that's an OT, and I'm sure for you as well as a health professional, that's the core reason. So this is just really life. For me, it was sort of just taking my OT hat and saying, as I watched people in the Stepping On program do their exercises, I realised that not everybody did them every day, and some people like to kind of snack them during the day. Can I do my sideways walking when I go down the hall to answer the doorbell and things? So I thought, I wonder if we could actually embed these in our daily life to the extent that we can actually make a difference. And so that was where the idea came from, and I invited Mia Fiataroni Singh to come on board, and she said Maria's worked in the area, a geriatrician who's worked in the area of strength training with older people, so she's very much into 90-year-olds lifting weights and doing weights, which she does even in nursing homes, and has made and showed that people can make a difference to their lives. So Maria came on board, and I said, I think we have to have people walking around with weights on their legs when they do their housework. Maria said, no, we have to make this look very different. I said, okay. So of course we had no weights, we had no vests, we just used our own body weight and activities through the day. So really it's about embedding daily tasks into our daily lives and routines. But to do this, we need to make it habitual into our daily life. So it's not quite saying, I have to remember to do my exercises. It's like, how do I remember to do these things every day? So that's why I also like to talk about the concepts as well. Just make sure I've got my watch somewhere so I don't make sure you stop for a break, although I'm sure Alex would tell me. Always like to have a story somewhere up front. This was Val. Val was in our pilot study, which seems such a long time ago now, and Joe was our physiotherapist who actually did the pilot program. And Val's husband had died a few years ago. She'd gone in for, I think it was a knee replacement, and come out of hospital, and she deteriorated somewhat, and she was walking up the stairs, how pulling herself up, not really walking up. She was using the hospital chair to sit on. She wasn't able to get up out of her nice, comfortable lounge. And she had this amazing garden, and her husband had set it up, done all the brickwork, and it was really, she just loved to potter in there. It reminded her of her life with her husband, and her family and her GP were saying, come on, it's time to move out, it's time to move on. She didn't really want to do that. So we did Joe did the LiFE program with Val, and she really took to it. She did things like, she had a bowl of fruit in the lounge, and so one of our activities is bending. Instead of bending like this, we're going to bend with our legs, and we're going to exercise our leg muscles every time we can. So every time she'd put something in this bowl, she had fruit in it, but she'd often use it for mail and different things, and she'd bend every time she put it in. It would remind her to do that. And here she is in the garden doing that. So on the left, she's weeding the garden by just bending over with her back. But after LiFE, every time she'd pick out a weed, she'd be doing a little partial squat, which is quite low and really quite good for her. So she did a lot of weeding, just wandering around the garden. So you can imagine how often the opportunities she had in her life to do some of those activities. So she did a number of balance and a number of the strength activities in the program. I've put this slide in. You can see her tandem walk really improved. She practiced a lot of tandem walking. The get up and go assessment, these are some of the assessments we used. Improved her right knee strength, her right hip and her right ankle. So that was baseline 3 months and 6 months. The pilot was a 6-month study, so it reflected the changes she had. Oh, there's one more part of that story that I always really like. So at the end, we went I interviewed Val. She had she talked about the things that she was now doing. She could get out of a chair. She didn't want to rail at the steps right at the back, and she said, I'm very careful walking up those, but I have got a rail elsewhere. And she said, when I went to the granddaughter's engagement party, it was at this club up some stairs and there was no lift. And she said, the other grandmother couldn't come, but I could get up the stairs, and my family noted that it was because of the LiFE program, so she was quietly a little bit proud. So we liked Val's story. We collected stories as we went. Now, so we started off thinking, what are the principles that we're trying to get across here? What's the philosophy? And do we teach the principles, or do we just teach the activities? So we kind of ummed and ahed back and forth, the three of us, talking, Joe, Maria and myself, talking back and forth. Of course, Joe was the one who went out and practiced all these things. So we decided that we would teach the principles, but we wouldn't kind of lecture. It would be just part of what we do, and that's how we actually taught it. So we had these things that was about improving your balance. You need to challenge your balance and keep progressing to more challenging. We know that's obvious, but we try and get that idea across to people during the course of the 5 weeks or 7 weeks or whatever you have, or 4 weeks or whatever you have with your person. And these were the principles, and from each of these principles we just devised the kinds of activities you normally do, but we embedded them in daily life. So reduced basis of support, shifting body weight and moving to the limits of stability, stepping over objects. We also had stepping and turning in the original program, but we didn't put it in this manual. We actually were going to do, and I truly must do this, a manual to show some upgrades and how we challenge, do some more challenging. So hopefully next year we might get that manual done as well. But once you start, you come up with ideas, and your participants do, and the idea is that they, you prescribe things first off, and over time they get the idea of it and come up with ideas. I rather like my elephant here. Now this is in South Africa, the Manapools elephants. It's a rare elephant because it's learnt to reach up and get the juicy leaves and stand on its hind legs. And there were 2 other elephants apparently following this elephant that day, and they were learning how to do it. And that elephant can actually stand on 2 hind legs. Now, it's easier for us to stand on 2 legs, but it can be quite hard for someone to tandem stand or whatever. So it's all relative to how we are. So that was just my balance photo. The principles for strength. Now, this ant is lifting much more than its weight, but so in our program, we're going to use gravity and our own body weight as strength. So we're not going to add any weights or anything. We're just really only going to lift our own body weight. And an ant can lift so much because it's so tiny. To improve strength, you must make your muscles work harder by loading your muscles. So we talk about that with our clients about how they need to load their muscles. So sometimes moving more slowly, increasing the time to use a muscle, using fewer muscles, or increasing the weight in some way in how you get up. So, and then of course we had with each of these, with the principles, we had about 6 or 7 particular activities that we have in a repertoire. And this particular woman is finding that during the washing she can do all sorts. She can do some squats, side-by-side walking, moving the washing basket. She's doing a bigger squat to take things out. She's doing a tandem walk, carrying something down. She's on her toes, putting it up and going up the stairs. She's taking care, but she's using at the top maybe 2 fingers as well as holding on to something. So she's been working very hard at her LiFE program to achieve that. So it's where you find these opportunities. But the challenge for us is we can't get someone to remember to do this every time, and you don't do washing every day. You've got to also have other things that you do that are regular activities as well. But there's lots of opportunities in everyday life. That's really what life's about. So these were some of our participants and their comments. I do all the same things, I just change the way I do them. I was looking for ways to make life easier by doing less. Now I look for ways to make some things harder. Just to talk about where life's at the moment. Actually, in the early days, I was contacted by Lisa Burton from West Australia, who was doing a PhD at the time. And she was working in a restorative care program with an exercise program there, and they were finding that people weren't really doing the program very well, so they decided to take LiFE on, and they're still doing the program over there in LiFE. They've taken on LiFE, so she's published a few papers. So it was a translational project quite early on. There's a few people who've looked at doing LiFE in a group situation. Maureen Ash and Lena Fleeg in Canada, and Lena's published a little paper from that. We have I think it's probably on there somewhere, the BF grant in Germany, about 3rd down on the list. We now have a large randomised trial that's fully funded with my colleague over at Heidelberg University in Germany, and we're comparing group-based with home-based to see if we can get the same effect. There's a group down in the south coast here who are doing LiFE group-based as well. So I think it's harder, but I think it's kind of interesting. It'd be hard not to just go to someone's home so you have a concept of where they are, so if you could do a home visit. But in a group-based situation, people could come and share the kinds of activities and suggestions that they have. Can you still hear me? Yes. You're all right. It's probably louder for me, is it? Yeah. So in a group-based situation, it may be that people can feed off each other and encourage each other with the kinds of things that they're doing and how it's going. So it's a different way of teaching it, but it hasn't been researched as yet, but there's some interest in doing that. There's another study, in a very large study that we've been doing in Europe with a big consortium. They've got about 3 million euros to do this study, and we've been looking at taking LiFE activities for younger people. Michael Schwenk, who's doing the other group-based LiFE, has been involved in that as well, a whole range of people, and did more challenging activities for people who were younger, so below 65. And we also have taken, we call that A-LiFE, we've also taken that and put it on, learning it through a mobile phone technology. But that's very early days pilot work. We're coming to a close with that study, so we might do some trials around that and develop that more. We have a study going on here led by Lisa Kay, looking at taking LiFE with people with severe vision impairment. And when Lisa asked me, I said, oh no, you can't do that. How could you possibly teach people who have no vision to do LiFE? It's so, but we did it in a pilot, and that was really good, and now we have a large trial going on, and we have our guide dogs mobility officers who are just amazing. They're not necessarily health professionals, some are, all sorts of walks of life, but they're used to teaching people how to move and negotiate the environment. So Joe and I have trained them up, and they're out there at the moment teaching people with vision impairment how to do life activities, because there are lots of people who have more risks than general population and fall a lot, and people with vision severe vision impairment are one of those groups. So there's a few things going on. We've been looking at different coaching tools, a grant in the US looking at life combined with home safety, so from an occupational therapist doing home safety and life integrated. We're trying to get some money to do life with people with stroke, and interested in more the habit theory. I have Ben Gardner from King's College London coming over to the university later this year, and he was very influential in when I went back to revise the concepts of why we think life works, or how we teach that. And I think, as I'll talk to you more about, habit theory is really core to that. So just some of the concepts underpinning life. Now, a friend of mine sent me this because she knows I like beer, and I said to her a bit later, one of the things that we teach in life is trying to change your environment around. So if you're going to try and remember to do some squats or up on your toes, then maybe you could move the milk lower down in the fridge, or the detergent down, or just something higher up in a cupboard that you normally go to. And just, you don't have to make it really high, but it prompts you to remember to that activity, a situational cue. And I said to Betty that I did try putting my beer in the bottom of the fridge, but it wasn't as cold, so I moved it back up. So what we suggest has to be relevant, and we have to engage the people. But at any rate, concepts underpinning life. So this is my concept map, and we developed it, and I reviewed it again with Joe at the end of the trial, and I got Joe to come back. I said, we've got to get the manual back looking, before we get it out there to everybody. And I took it to a number of psychologists and Ben Gardner overseas, and reviewed it. So I'm quite happy with what we came up with here. And at the centre of this is habit change. So I'll briefly go through this, because I do think if you understand this, then you'll get what we mean about the planner and the tools where you actually get people to write down how, why and when they do things, and why it's important not to do too many things at once, so they have time to just get the idea and embed a few things, and then start to increase it. These are our beliefs of how it should be done. So I've talked about the principles for balance and strength. So we do try and get those across during the course of teaching different activities. If we're going to change a habit, we obviously need an intent to change. So people have to understand why they're doing something, and they need to know the benefit and the rationale. So I will talk a little bit about when we teach a particular activity, we try and link it up to, well, if you why that they might do that particular thing. I've actually got a couple of sheets in there I'll go through later when we go and do an activity. So the idea is to link it to function or gait, or preventing falls. So I'll try and give you a few of those examples as we go through. So understanding the links, how to protect from falling. So for example, Joe always does it much more in terms of walking and what it does for stance phase of walking or push off or whatever. My examples may be a bit more functional, but we kind of learnt from each other anyway. For example, we do just one activity where we're moving sideways. It's not an activity, it's not a movement we do very often. Now I know it's not with weights, but if we never move sideways, we're never going to exercise that. So we get people doing that from different, setting the table or whatever they're doing, moving sideways. And if you talk about it with somebody, why might we do that? We can talk about our hip abductors and how important they are. If we're going to protect ourselves and have from a fall, we need to be able to have some strength there. So if they've had a fall, that little bit of information might be enough to say, oh, okay, that's important. So we just pick up little snippets of what we think might be relative for the person. So that's what we mean about linking function, falls and gait. As I said, there are patterns of gait and walking as we age. And so if we think about how important our ankles are to walking or walking upstairs, we can talk about things like that. Changes that occur as we age, and of course relating it to personal goals. Now we didn't do broad goal setting like, you know, do I want to be able to walk upstairs to go to my granddaughter's birthday party, but we did ask about goals. We didn't formalise it. When Michael did his the LiFE in Europe, we added goals more formally in that program, and I always think that's a good idea. But the kind of setting that we did were very specific to the activities. But we did talk about goals, and sometimes if you know, I want to keep catching public transport, we always know that's a good thing to know that people aim for. Demonstration and help making them links to make them more relevant to them. We use a lot of demonstration ourselves. Now we're in the house moving around. We're not sitting down, we're not in a gym, we're actually in the kitchen, in the whatever the room is, if we can be in the area, and showing them how to do whatever the activity is. So we do a lot of demonstration, making it relevant. I think I've talked about that. Habitual change. So how long does it take to form a habit? How long do you think, if you decided to, one of the activities for strength is getting up out of a chair slowly or sitting down slowly. So how long do you think it might take you to remember every time you got out of your chair to do so slowly? A week? A week? A week, okay. It can take... No, this is not about that particular activity, but people who have started to look at this to say, if I have to change a habit, it can take a week, but it might be 21 days, 66, 84 days. So I wouldn't say that's true of what we're doing here, but it just says, hey, it's not that easy for any of us to change our habits. So we do need to have that reinforcement, that reminder, and to think about it. We need a way of translating into action and repeating in the same context. So part of this theory is that we'll pick a particular activity, how, when and where. I'm going to clean my teeth, stand on one leg, clean my teeth every morning, morning and night. How, when and where. So then I've got a prompt and so on. And then when I've done that, maybe I'll do some more one leg standing. Might do it while I'm chopping up the vegetables at night or doing the ironing or something like that. So it's about getting into active memory until it's embedded in routines. And I've said the tools and the forms were designed to try and help us. They're very simple. They were less simple when we did the research. Okay, so it's planning and visualise. So some of the theory around it is that if we think about, if we say, and some of the early theory wasn't about LiFE, of course, it was about looking at, say, a study that looked at people putting their waste paper in the paper thing rather than the bin or something or other, and they got people to visualise doing it, and other people they just gave them the receptacle. It was the people that visualised and thought about it that actually followed through better. So if we use that idea of getting people to visualise, so you're just doing the activity, you demonstrate, get them to do it. Now can you think about, what's going to prompt you to do that at a night when you're cooking the dinner, or getting them to visualise actually doing it is part of it as well. So when you're doing the planner, how, when and where, and getting them to write down, or you're helping them write down what they're going to do for the week, that's kind of important. I've talked about situation environmental cues. This was someone watching The Bold and the Beautiful. They were going to get up and do some things in the ads or something like that. So that was their prompt. Ooh, I think I've turned the whole thing off. And this gentleman here is remembering again, visualising doing it. So to challenge getting up, we might get up without using our hands. That's one of the principles. What's going to make him remember to do it and to remember to do it correctly? he watches a lot of cricket, and I always tell people about in the US how the cricket goes for 5 days or whatever. So we've got lots of opportunity to do some activity in between the ads. Changing habits, I've talked about situation cues, prompts to action. Here's a gentleman who's moved his coffee further up. As I said, it didn't have to be on the highest shelf, it's just a prompt. And the situation can sometimes be the cue. So every time this lady goes to see a set of stairs, she says, I'm doing my LiFE activity. We never do LiFE down the stairs, we only ever do LiFE up the stairs because we really don't want people to be thinking about doing it differently. Now it might be okay, but we kind of prefer to do that. So it might be, I go upstairs 2 at a time. That's a challenge for me. But for this lady, it might be going up just slowly, or it might be going up holding on less. But it's consistent repetition in the same context that will help us practice it and improve our balance and strength, and also our habit. That's our gentleman who's moved it. And then of course we do the same thing we do with any exercise program, and we count. So we had to devise a way of counting, so we do have a counter that we use that you can, a form. We don't count everything, but we did pick, during the training, we picked 1 day a week where we got them to count a couple of things that they do. So one gentleman counted when he did his tandem walk every step instead of how many walks he did. So I mean, it doesn't really make, we don't, it's not quite like strength training, we can do it, but it gives an idea, and it also helps people reinforce and gives some immediate feedback for what they've done. So all those things are really important. And then of course it's their skill in coming up with ideas and opportunities and planning, how they can challenge their self and master it. Upgrading, I've talked a little bit about, and becoming autonomous so that you do less as you go along. So you know it's working when they come up with the ideas after a few visits, and it's working better. So we did a couple of things. We wanted to do something simple so you had an idea of what they do during the week. So we came up with what we call the daily routine chart, which was just getting them to write down, when they get up, do they clean their teeth? I don't know, not everybody does, but what do they do during the day? Do they go to bowls? Do they, what are some opportunities when they go to bowls? What do they do during the week on a kind of basis and in every day? So you kind of get an overview of a week with that. So put the kettle on for tea, iron the clothes, have breakfast. So it's just, what's a typical week last week that you did? It gives you a starting point. Talked about that. Looking for ways and opportunities. Upgrading is continuous, so we're always continuing. So as soon as we master one level, we're saying let's make it more challenging, and how can we upgrade it? And we experience functional outcomes if we do all these things. Our balance will be better, we'll be able to do more things during the day, confidence and participation, and we'll have some protection from falling. So obviously we don't always see those outcomes, but they're the aims of the outcomes. But we certainly can see when people say, I can stand up to put my trousers on, and all those other things you hear from when they do exercise, as some of you would already know. I think I might just show before. When are we having the break, Alex? Yeah, what's the time now? It's 1:45? Okay, so before we go on to teaching the LiFE program, I'm going to see if I can just show this little video, which was taken by the Falls Network a while ago, and the first part of it was Betty, physiotherapist, teaching the Otago exercise program, which is a structured program. And right at the end, Joe came in and did a couple of LiFE activities. It was done in a home that didn't belong to the two ladies that actually did it. So you can see they aren't familiar with the environment, but it just shows you a little bit about how it's different than a regular program, and how simple it is, really.
Hi, my name's Joe. I'm working on the LiFE Research Project. The LiFE Research Project is all about taking the activities that you've just watched with Betty and putting them into your daily life. So rather than doing a separate set of exercises that are discrete and separate from your daily activities, we're going to take the activities that are going to improve your strength and balance and we're going to try and slot them in to your daily routines. Life's really about looking for opportunities within your day to include these activities. We want people to challenge their balance and improve the strength in their legs, because improving your balance and improving the strength in your legs is going to help prevent falls. What we're going to do now, Nancy, is we're going to do a tandem stand while you're standing at the sink washing up. So that what you could do is each time during the day that you have to come over and rinse a cup or rinse a plate, you can do the tandem stand, and that way you can work on your balance. Now with the tandem stand, it actually helps your balance because your base of support, so the bits that hold you up, are very, very narrow as opposed to being a little bit broader. So that just means that you actually have to work so much harder. So when you're doing this, you've done the tandem stands before, so it's one foot in front of the other, and you're near the kitchen sink. Now with this, you can use your hands as you need them, and you can even use your tummy if you want, so that if you're feeling a little bit wobbly, you don't have to try and stay up here. So you'd lean in, and for example, you'd be washing up or rinsing this cup, and you're staying in your tandem stand. Now there I'm using my tummy, but then I come away and I'd have my hands ready to hold on. So what I might get you to do now is I might get you to do the tandem stand while you're washing up the cup. Your foot position's beautiful, Nancy. That's really, really good. And so you'd just be leaning at the sink and you'd be going in doing some of the washing up. Now at the moment you're only washing up 1 or 2 cups. But if, like say for example, you were having to do all the washing up, you could even change your foot position so that you put the other one forward. And that's as simple as it is. So if you went to the sink 3 or 4 times each day, that's 3 or 4 tandem stands that you've managed to get done, and you've gotten the washing up done as well. Okay. The activity that we're going to do now, Florence, is bending the knees. So each time you bend your knees, you're going to be strengthening your quads muscles. You don't need to do a big, heavy, deep knee bend way down to the floor. Any amount of just bending your knees and holding your body up is going to help strengthen those. Really good activity for this is loading and unloading the dishwasher. So what you would do for that is, instead of doing the bend over like that and pulling this out and lifting the plate out, you would bend your knees, and then when you wanted to put the next plate in, you'd go down and bend the knees again. But you can see that by loading the dishwasher 1 plate at a time, all of a sudden by the end of getting the dirty dishes into the dishwasher, you may have done anywhere between 10 and 30 knee bends. So that all of a sudden they start to build up fairly quickly, because it's very, very easy to start putting this everywhere and all of a sudden you've got slightly sore muscles. Beautiful. And the way you're doing that is really, really nicely done. A nice knee bend without pushing too far. And even to that top shelf, you can still do that little knee bend. So doing the knee bends doesn't have to be just done at a dishwasher. When you're getting the breakfast bowls out for cereal in the morning, you can do little knee bends to get those bowls out, to pop them on the kitchen bench. And that's fantastic. Thank you. Nancy, what we're going to do now, the activity we're going to try is a single leg stand. And the place we've chosen to try this is when you put the kettle on, because you have a cup of tea a couple of times a day. So when you come over to put the kettle on, what you're going to do is you're going to flick the kettle on, and then you can do a single leg stand while you're waiting for the kettle to boil. The important thing with this is that you've actually got something good and solid in front of you to hold on to. So you would have your hands there ready to support you if you needed them. But I know that from testing you, you're quite good, so you can just have your hands kind of above the bench. The important thing is to stand on one leg. We don't mind where the leg that's in the air is. Most people find it comfortable behind them. The other thing to remember is to actually switch legs occasionally. We don't want one leg to be really good and the other one to be not so good at all. So what I'm going to get you to do now is pretend you're turning the kettle on. Okay. And then single leg stand with hands ready to go. And that's beautiful. Now, if the kettle takes a little while to boil, you might decide at some stage to switch your leg over. And you make sure that you don't get fatigued when you're doing it either, so that if you find that it's getting a bit tired, then make sure you do pop the other leg down. That's excellent. Now, the other thing that you can do, I'll take you down off your leg, the other thing you can do, it doesn't just have to be the kettle. If you had to stand at the stove, and had something that had to be stirred occasionally, you can do a single leg stand while you're standing at the stove doing the stirring. So I'll just swap around here, so that if that was on the stove cooking, you can be there, single leg stand, and you can stir away. Now there's no set amount of time you need to be on each leg. If you were doing a quick stir, it might just be a quick single leg stand, but if you were stirring something like a risotto where you're there for a while, you could swap your legs backwards and forwards. The other places you can do this are not just in the kitchen. This is a really good one to do brushing your teeth or brushing your hair, or any of those activities where you're standing in front of the bench and have to do something in front of you. Florence, the activity we're going to do now is up on your toes. So for this activity, it's really just raising your body up onto your toes, heels off the ground. I don't mind how far your heels come away. You don't have to be way up in the air. As long as they're raised up, even just a little bit, will strengthen your calf muscles. The reason we want to strengthen your calf muscles is it actually helps a lot with your gait and propelling you in that forward direction. So when you're kind of pushing forward, the stronger your calf muscles are, the more propulsion you can get. So how we try and implement this in your daily life is each time you need to reach above waist height, you go up on your toes. Now to reach into this cupboard, theoretically I don't need to go on my toes, but if I do go on my toes, it means that I'm getting all that extra activity. So for this one, I might even up on my toes to open the cupboard, and I might come down, up on my toes to get out the biscuits that I wanted, and then down. Then when I'm finished, back on my toes, biscuits back in. It's nice if you can do this where there is something solid in front of you, so that if you do lose your balance a little bit, you've got something to hold on to. So that's why the kitchen, because it has so many things to hold on to, is quite good. And that's really, really nice clearance. I'm actually going to make it a bit harder for you now. I'm going to get you to try and do it without holding on, because that just challenges your balance that little bit more. Away you go. Good. That's excellent. So what it means is each time you go up on your toes. The other one I particularly like is in the wardrobe, because most of us have to reach up to get our coat hangers out. If you go up on your toes in the wardrobe, because most of us get dressed at least once a day. What we've covered this afternoon is really just a brief example of part of the LiFE program. The LiFE program has 15 activities. What we really want people to get the idea of is putting these activities into their daily routines. What you saw here in the kitchen is that just doing your activities in the kitchen, you have the opportunity to embed so many activities from the LiFE program in just this one area of the home. It doesn't have to just be in the kitchen. It can be done anywhere within the home, but the idea is really taking the activities that are going to improve your strength and your balance and putting them into your daily tasks and routines.
So that was a little introduction to the lovely Jo, and that gives you an idea. It's really quite simple, really. It's not complex, but it just takes a bit of time to kind of get it happening, to get the concept across. And so we're just about to break up, aren't we? I'll just ask if there's any questions first. Any quick questions? I do like questions, so if you do have a question during the program, just please ask. Anything before we... Yeah, thanks.
So what sort of repetitions are you asking people to do, say if they're doing a stand up and down, compared to perhaps a structured exercise program, you know, when you're sent home to do 80 stand-ups or something like that, it might be a bit dull. Or
yeah.
How are you phrasing it? What sort of repetitions are you getting people to do?
Thank you for asking that. We do not tell people how many. We never do that because it is different, the program. So the idea is to do as many as you can. And that's all we ask you to do. So it was very uncomfortable, first off, not knowing if it was going to work. So the trick is to try and get people to do them a lot during the day. So, but you could imagine if you, every time you stood up from a chair and sat down, how often you could actually exercise. So that was why it was different. We actually don't encourage you to say, now do 10 of those. But we do say, well, you're standing on one leg cleaning your teeth, let's lengthen the time you do it or do more often. And because it's linked to something during the day, then you try and link it to that. The little squats, think of how often you could squat every time you open a drawer or pick something up or put something down. It depends on how active people are, and if they're very inactive, there's still things that people can do. But does that kind of answer the question? We actually don't. So it is different. We don't say how many. And that for some people is the other thing that's uncomfortable. It's not in a safe environment. You think, but we actually didn't have any more, some people had some pain and different things, but we didn't have any injuries compared to the structured program. There was no difference. Yeah.
So how long do you follow them doing those activities? Because I found some of the patients, you might get them to do a stand. If you're not coming back regularly enough, they've devised a new way to do it, this cheap way. And without someone coming back and saying, well, no, that's not how I want you to do it, or same with sideways walking or the knees, it doesn't really matter what exercise. They can always, if there is weakness, they can develop a different habit in performing the exercise.
Yeah, I'm supposed to repeat the question for the camera and I forgot the last time, but I'll try and get that one. So people will take the activities and they'll change them. They'll do them differently and not the right way. So how much follow-up do we do, and is that correct? Yeah. So in the research we did 5 home visits, and then we did a couple of phone calls, and we actually did 2 booster visits. So it was over a period of time. It wasn't every week, but every couple of weeks, or we might do every 3 weeks. So we do, the first time you might do 2 strength, 2 balance, and you'll write where I'm going to do that and when, and then you come back the next time and you go over that, and you have a look at how they're doing it. And you might get them to do it have less holding. So you're trying to get them to understand why they're doing it and how they're doing it. So it's just going over again each time you come back, and then adding some new ones. So you're trying to get across to them why they should be doing it in a certain way. And I think that was what we thought was important. So it was just, but you will get people that will adapt them. But we found people were being more creative actually with this program about coming up with some challenging activities. So I don't know if that really answered, is that sort of, that makes sense?
It makes sense. It's just that if they do have underlying weakness, then rather than doing the activity that you're actually getting them to do to try and address the weakness, they will then...
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing. Yeah, sorry.
They will then do it a slightly different way. So you might do a sit to stand, and then come back and they're pushing their knees together to go up, and all these sorts of things, which is not actually doing what you...
Yeah, and I guess if the example was, if they're standing up, they're pressing their knees together, so they're not doing it. So, all you can do is point that out to them, obviously. There are certain ones that are more difficult that you really can do wrong, like, the leaning to one side is really not very much, because if you do this, you're not getting it. But we call it, what did we call it in this one? Leaning to the limits of stability. So trying to get people to move either forwards or backwards or to the sides. And it's not very much, but, it's to my toppling point. Where do I... so if you've got to watch people that they're not doing that one. So there are ones, I think, that are more difficult. So I think that's always watching what people, trying to get them to understand. I live in an apartment, and so and it's attached to a shopping centre, to Birkenhead Point actually. So I'm not very good with shopping or planning ahead anymore. So I'm often going down to get my food of an evening, what I want to cook. Although my husband's just retired now, he's doing that. I'm often standing in line at the supermarket on a daily basis, getting my meat or something. And so that's the one I always do because people don't notice what I'm doing. And I can do that sideways. So sort of incorporating it in. But your point wasn't about that. It was about how do you... So correct form is important. And of course safety, getting people to do things safely as well is also important, just as is in any program. So they're just challenges the way we do them. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, that would be good. Thank you. Sorry, I'm really troubling. It's me. Say that again.
I was just wondering if you would you say that an ideal scenario might be to basically be asking these people to do as much functional activity as they can in their homes, but also potentially, if possible, accessing something that is supervised and structured as well as doing this. Is that sort of an ideal, like where you can mix and you can supplement?
Yeah, so the question is it ideal to perhaps do the LiFE program plus supplement it with a structured program as well? And look, in the research, of course, we didn't do that because we were comparing LiFE to a structured program. But I do both. I do strength because I was always doing it in the gym. I'd learnt that a long time ago from my physio friends. And I do my LiFE activities for balance more. But I'm starting to realise I have to do more, so I'm incorporating some more of the LiFE. So I do a bit of a mix. So I think it's personal, and I think that's in real life. That's, if someone's doing some structured program, don't stop them. Or if you think they mean they're not doing enough LiFE activities, sure, they could do some. Everything's individual. But we did find that LiFE alone, if people didn't do structured programs, did have some good outcomes. So LiFE on its own, if they're doing enough, and we don't know what enough is, we do have some ways of recording which I'll show you, yeah, so does that make sense? Yeah. One more question, then we'll break.
I think you might be about to address that, because I was just going to say in the absence of not very loud. Having set reps and numbers of exercises, and I get that as a very functional thing. How do you reassess their improvement? Do you get them to record how long they can balance on one leg, or to keep them focused and motivated to improve, to keep on track with doing it? How do you sort of set that carrot in front of the nose?
Yeah, look, I think that's a really good question too. How do we reassess them? How do we get them to have that feedback that they're actually, do we measure how long they stand on one leg? We did develop an assessment tool which we call the LiFE assessment tool, and so we thought, well, how are we going to assess them first off and go in? So we really devised some activities that were similar to the ones that we do, but it's not really measured so much. It's more observing if they can do a tandem stand. We kind of graded it a bit. So it's kind of a functional assessment tool, but there's nothing to stop you if you normally do a get up and go or another assessment to re-evaluate someone, because they like that. It motivates them. So if you do have some tools that you normally do to assess someone's balance or strength, just do those again, because it does. But we also found when people tell us that they can do more, I can now stand up out of that chair or do some everyday things, it's a good thing as well. But no, we didn't assess quite in that way. Of course, for the research we did strength, and we did some really much more, we did an hour and a half of balance and strength and other assessments. But in your clinical practice, what do you have time to do? But yeah, I think it's a good idea because we get motivated. We can be motivated through the LiFE program if we feel it's making an effect, but we can also be motivated by that immediate feedback from something with exercise. So, yeah, up to you how you might do that. Okay, so we will do a little activity in this half to get us up moving around as well, and to try teaching each other a life activity. So I'll talk a little bit about teaching now. Amy's just, if you haven't got the handouts, we realised they hadn't sort of been picked up and printed off the handouts and the little exercise. So as Amy comes around, if you haven't got one of each of these extra ones, she's coming around now. And I know the group is really mixed. I know that there are lots of physiotherapists here, but we also have some occupational therapists. I know we have some GPs and a few nurses. Do we have any other, any podiatrists? Anybody a bit different? So it's a really mixed group, which is really nice. In our randomised trial, the team leader was a physiotherapist, but we had physiotherapists, we had occupational therapists, and also an exercise physiologist at one stage teaching the LiFE program. We'd have lots of case studies and share cases, and sometimes we'd come with a difficult case and we'd each share different ideas for how we might motivate people or improve the challenge them a bit more in their activities. So that was really nice when we were doing the research. So let's get on to thinking about what are these activities and how might we teach them, and then we'll have a quick look at the assessment tools that we developed, and then we'll have a look at a little bit of what you might do with LiFE after this. So, as I said, we do assess their routines using that daily, what did we call it? DRC, daily routine chart. We teach the principles and strategies, as I said, but during the course of each activity. We plan them with the client, and then we start to engage them with their own planning. And we encourage meaningful goals, working towards habitual change. I talked about feedback and monitoring and how important that is. And as you can see from Joe, and I'm sure that you all do this anyway, that enhancing that self-confidence, that positive feedback is really important. Form and safety we've talked about, mastery and upgrading. So doing things correctly and working out ways to upgrade. We didn't program people to say we want you to do more, but as people improved, we did talk to them, and in the manual we had suggestions for how they might increase their physical activity. So we talked about things like, well, when you go to the supermarket, if you're going to drive, maybe you could park further back, and or when you go out to lunch with a friend, maybe instead of sitting down chatting afterwards, you go to walk together, or so just different ideas for how they might think about doing more physical activity. In our LiFE program for younger people, they actually added a whole component on physical activity into that, and being less sedentary and being more active. So they actually had very specific goals for that one, but we did not include that in LiFE. But clearly that's what we want people to be able to do more safely. So here we have a gentleman who's doing his squats while he's doing his bowls. When he's carrying out his groceries from the car, he's carrying out some at a time and doing some sideways walk at the same time. And he's going up 2 steps at a time, so that's quite a high level program. And I've already shown the video of Joe. Now, we do teach the principles, so as we're going through, we might think about trying to get across the idea of why someone is doing a tandem walk, perhaps they can't, they have to start with their feet a little bit apart or whatever, but we try and get the idea of how they're holding on, then holding on less intermittently or with a few fingers, to where they can hold on with nothing. Some people have done a few things with their eyes closed, but not always. So there are different ways of reducing your base of support and challenging your balance in different ways. Shifting your body, we've talked about the principles. I've talked about all those points, and they're challenging. So these are the principles that we've talked about already. So these are just the activities, and if you get the participant manual, they're clearly in there. We have someone showing someone how to do something, some tips about what to do and what not to do, reducing your base of support. We do a tandem stand, get people to do a tandem stand while they're doing an activity. So that's more harder than just doing it standing up, so they might have to hold on or not. A tandem walk, trying to get people to do a proper heel-toe walk, and again, form is important for doing that. We had a lot of, one of the strong changes we had was in ankle strength, and I think that was related to the things like heel-toe walking, tandem walking, and so on. One leg stand, we get people to do that. Now, it doesn't matter, as Joe said in the video, how high you lift your leg up. I often stand with my leg around there, so that's not challenging my balance as if I was doing that. But if I'm holding my leg around there, I find that I can do it for longer, so I sometimes do that when I'm standing. We tried to get our funding for this over a few years. It's always hard to get National Health Medical Research funding. It gets harder every year, I think, but it did take a few years to get this one up. And the first year I put it in, it got thrown out. And I think a colleague of mine actually reviewed it. I think I know who it was. He's come around now. And it was like, this is so unsafe. Could not possibly do this. This should not be trialled. And I'd put in the front some examples, and one of them was, standing on one leg or something, or standing on a bus, doing a balance activity. So they can honed in on that one. And anyway, we took that out next time. And then one of our participants came in one day to our, this was a story that was told by one of our therapists teaching the program, and she said, oh, so-and-so's worked out that on the train coming back, so he's progressed further along, he can stand up on one leg, and as long as he's holding on, and he's doing really well, and he was doing it safely. I thought, yay, as I said, I live at Birkenhead, so I just get into the bus. I always grew up much further out of the city, so into the city in 10-15 minutes is great. So, but if I go in on the bus into the city, it's a great opportunity to stand up because you often don't get a seat. So the trouble is now that if I'm doing, and I'm always holding on a bit, but it's a great way of standing up and challenging. But the problem is, people look at my grey hair and say, would you like a seat? So I do get a seat that way, but it wasn't the intent. And I can't say, no, I don't. I'm just doing my exercises because I think it's so nice when a younger person does offer their seat. So anyway, because usually they're just sitting there looking at their mobiles, aren't they? Not watching someone who's a bit older. I didn't think I was looking that old. But at any rate, perhaps I didn't look very safe. So I don't know where I'm transgressing, but I am. So one leg stand is a great activity. Now, with in our project in our LiFE, we actually did some asking people which activities they liked or didn't like, and so we had a chart, and there were some that they liked and some that they didn't like, and there were specific ones, but. And some were liked a lot more, like bending down was liked a lot, and there were more challenging ones like hill walking, which wasn't. They had more challenging ones even than we've got here, like lunging and various things. But the interesting thing was that all of them were liked by somebody, and the ones that were disliked weren't necessarily the ones that they would not do. So they might be challenging. So when you're working things out with people, it's kind of nice to understand. So at the end of the 12 months, with some of our participants on the trial, we'll say, well, what are you going to keep doing? Oh, I don't want to keep doing that one, but I'm going to do this and this and this. So we just hope they were doing enough to continue afterwards. But at the end of 12 months, we certainly had enough people doing things. leaning side to side and leaning backwards, shifting weight and moving to the limits of stability. So again, as I said before, this isn't moving very much at all. So it's keeping your feet on the ground and moving both ways. So it's actually quite, if you want to hold that for a while, how long can you hold it for? So you see what I mean? You can increase your opportunities for doing that, or the amount of time it takes you to do that. Stepping over objects forwards and backwards. Now some things are a bit contrived, so you don't often step over an object and step back. But we incorporated that into the program, so some people might, if the good one was where the in between the kitchen, if there's a bench, because they can hang on first off, and it reminds them to do it. So they might, a few times a day, do a stepping over or a stepping back, and say, don't forget to do both feet and bring them up. So it's really a stepping action, can be quite high. Some people would put a cereal box down or something and step over it. If you have grandkids, they'd step over an object, step back, and then pick it up. So some of the things were contrived, and people were quite creative the way that they would come and try and think about where and when they would do some of these activities. Thinking back, I'm thinking of Joe a lot today and Maria. When we were devising the program, we had a challenge to ourselves. We were trying to figure out how we would do our counting and how we would do our measurement of this, because it was so different than a regular program. So we said, let's count today how many squats we can do. And we had a counter each, and we had a little marker. And so we all came back the next week. We're all so competitive, we all thought we'd won. And I did heaps. Anyway, who won? Maria had the grandchildren there that weekend and a party. She won by heaps. And so I don't know how many she did, but it was a real lot. So that was kind of, and that gave us the idea of doing one day a week where we would rotate different activities for people to count. So we can do stepping over objects forwards and backwards, stepping over objects sideways. Now we called some balance activities and some life activities, but not all. Some have got balance. They're not really always just balance or just strength. They can be some of both, but we kind of called them that so that we could get the idea of balance and strength. So there's just Jo doing some in her kitchen. Jo and I often both include this when we're giving talks, we've noticed. And he was one of our early participants, Robert. I remember his story really well. He could not believe how poor his balance was, and that made him really understand why he had had some falls. And so he really practiced tandem walking really seriously, and he eventually was able to do it not holding on, and was very proud and had lots of changes. So he made some really positive changes and stopped the falls. He wasn't going out, he was really being isolated in his home. It was a really lovely story, and that's him in his hallway doing his tandem walking. I took this overseas and they said, oh, it's very Aussie, he's in his shorts. Stepping over objects. I better move it along. What have we? Because I actually want you to do some activities now. So the strength ones. Now, in your kit is a 2-page thing that says benefits function. So we'll need your activity that Amy's given you out, and also what's useful. I've done for you today, because I notice it's not always in the book, and we're always talking about when we're doing a different activity, what can we say to people about that? For example, so it's just a couple of pages where I've started to put some of the things I've noticed Jo and I often say to people, why they are doing something. For example, tandem walk, it challenges how it challenges balance. You could talk about ankle strength there. One leg stand, need to stand on one leg during the stance phase of the walking cycle as the other leg moves forward, or when you're putting on trousers or socks, you're standing on one leg. So just different ideas of how it would relate to functional gait. So when you're teaching your activity, try and think of something like that you would say that might be relevant to the person. It kind of gets the principle across. So you might talk about, if we do this more slowly, or if we do it for longer, and so on. So that might be useful. So this, I think we'll do this exercise next. So in pairs, what you're going to do is, you've got one balance activity and one strength activity. One person's going to teach the other person the balance, and the other person's going to teach the other person. What have we got? We've got Tandem Stand, on your heels. Is that what we've got? No, wrong one.
No, it's the same one.
Oh, you've got 4. Okay, we've got Tandem Stand to choose from, which is, we've called it a balance activity. We've got On Your Heels Walking, which is a strength activity. Doing a lot of that at the moment. It's really good. Really hard to do standing still, much easier to do walking. Teaching the sit to stand, and leaning side to side and one leg stand. So just pick one balance, and then the other person can pick a strength activity and teach you that. So have a go of teaching them the correct form, thinking of something that will impart what they will get out of it, what the benefit would be. And I want you to see if they can commit to how, when and where they would do it. So they'll need to write down a statement they'll be taking home. We won't be able to check up on them. It'll be an honour system. So if we're doing a 2-day workshop, we usually come in the next day and see how people went. Do you remember it? So try and see if you can work out when they could do it. So I'm making this real. We want you to try it. Whenever we teach LiFE, we always say, do it yourself, and then you'll get it, and then you can teach someone else. That's the easiest way. So this is your opportunity. I'll come round, so if you have a question, just ask me, put up your hand. So, okay, so we have pairs, or threes if pairs don't work out, and have a go of teaching a balance to your partner and a strength activity back. How did we go? People are still doing it. Any comments? Were you surprised at anything or anything different? Sorry, can we have the... Thank you.
We found what was interesting now doing the walking on your heels. After doing that for a little bit, the natural instinct was to want to go on our toes.
Okay.
So it's almost, you got a 2-for-1 little exercise in there.
Good. Anyone else got a comment? I know I got lots of good comments wandering around. Can I ask my OT friend? We were talking about, how I'd learned all my life to make life easier, and I had to sort of rethink when I did LiFE. Do you want to make a comment about that?
I just made a comment that a lot of the time I'm telling my clients to rearrange things to make it easier to reach, but then changing your mindset to go, oh, what about those things that you use every day that aren't necessarily dangerous to put up the top? You're going to fall on your head. But why don't we rearrange them to make it harder? Because then you're making life easier.
So I think that it challenges OTs to think about what they do, challenges physios in different ways, as I've learned, so it's great. So so it was just the idea of how you might teach it and thinking about, what to do. Does anyone think their partner was committed to do something? Put up your hand if you think they were. Some yes, good, great, good. That's the hardest thing, is to actually follow through. And I meant to make you all stand up slowly earlier on and then see if you remembered later in the day. So I'm going to do that right now. Stand up slowly, and you really feel your quads working really slowly. And then let's do a down slowly. Okay. Now, can you visualize yourself when you get up today to go home doing it? Let's try and remember to watch each other and see if anybody remembers. It's hard. So that's why we have those extra prompts and things. So that probably leads us in very quickly. I'm just going to rush through the last bit and then see if there are any more questions, and then I want to talk about upgrading. How many more do I have to do? More. How many more opportunities can you have? There's no set number. The focus is on doing as many as they can find opportunity to do, more and more. So different ways of challenging. We talked about different height people and so on. So someone who's more rotund might actually find it difficult to do a tandem stand and not have themselves being supported. So someone taller though may have to bend down. So maybe if you combine principles in some things too, like moving from side to side. I know it's a bit contrived and hard to do, but bending down and doing a side day's walk is a highly challenging thing. There's always ways that you can do to think about challenging. So can anyone else think of ways of making what you were doing more challenging? Did anyone come up with some ideas?
Adding a load, like
Just holding on to something?
you're carrying something or holding on.
When you're doing your tandem walk or
Yeah.
something like that. Yep. I think one of our photos is someone holding, doing a tandem walk, holding a tray with or holding their cup and sauce, their teacup or something. So there's all, different things that you can do, or talking to somebody on the phone or whatever while you're doing your, leaning to one side. I realised that I actually do an upgrade of. We were looking at the requirement that we had in the book with the baseline for moving to the limits of sway. We actually say put your feet shoulder length apart, which gives people more balance to begin with. But of course I do my feet close together, so that's an upgrade, isn't it? Which is why, so I'd forgotten that was an upgrade because that's what I do. So there's different ways. So finding more opportunities, thinking of more places to connect it with, making changes to your environment, of course, making the activity longer, combining principles, and adding more challenging life activities like the stepping and turning, which we didn't include, which was simply doing a kind of a bit of a dance, really, and turning around. Maybe if you do the dishwasher and then do a little bit of a dance to music or something and put your dishes down. I mean, be creative. So it's adding things within some situation. So there's different activities, and that was one I had previously, a whole particular thing that you're doing that day and adding a number of different things to it. So you kind of got your life hat on, and your washing becomes your gym, or your garden becomes your gym, or whatever. So very briefly, because I'd like you to do the last little activity, is the planning and recording. Now you have the activity planner and the LAT, which is the life assessment tool. Kind of got these back to front in a way, but the activity planner is just our planning document, and it has one for balance. You can download all of these from Sydney University Press without cost, the planners and the life assessment tool from there if you want our copies. So it was just the tool where we get people to plan. So that's the balance one. We've got each of the ones on the principle, then the activity. Then we say, I will do a tandem stand when I'm washing my hair. What will you do, how will you do it, and where will you do it? Trying to get them to visualise. And then we just say, oh, okay, today is Wednesday, so we're going to start today, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Monday. So you get a full week in. And all we did was tick whether they'd done it or not. And come back next week, haven't done too well with that one. What's going on there? Let's have another look. Let's change it. Let's do something. Show me how you've done really well with that. Show me how you're doing it. Let's have a bit of a check. And let's add a different situation. And then we might add some other balance activities this week and some more strength. In some of the research we're doing now, we, of course, doing our research, we just produce these no end. They're looking at some of the more, how you can get things that you can write on, and it's the one board, all this fancy new stuff. You can get them from Officeworks and different things. So some people are coming up with ways of doing it that you can just write on and wipe it off. There's some different boards that you can get. So we probably should create that for LiFE particularly, might be useful, but yeah. So the same with the strength, we've got all the different things that you can do there, and then each week you up the activities or keep them the same if they're managing and that they're not ready to upgrade. And you write a specific plan. The activity planner, that's an example of it. You've got these in your notes, and some example. You do the planning first off, but as you go on, you want the participant to come up with the ideas and do it. The activity counter this was what we came up with, and you could have, we just did 2 activities each week for the course of the, however long we were seeing them. And we rotated it. So we just said, okay, when would it suit you? Let's do, what are we going to do this week? Tandem walk. Okay, let's do tandem walk, 1 leg stand. And on that day, you're going to count them. We gave them activity counters. Some people like that. Some people kind of guessed at the end of the day or the end of the week probably. Some people were really good and did count it in their little 1, 2, 3, 4 with a little stroke, 1, 2, 3, 4 stroke, and how many they got. And then if they had any issues, to just jot them down for us. So we used that as our way of recording to try and get an idea of intensity. It's certainly not accurate, but it gives you a bit of an idea of how they're going. And we've got that same one again. We've talked about the manuals already. As I said, we've worked out you can get 10% off, is it? 20% off with that little code for the next few weeks if you want to use that. We've worked out with Sydney University Press if you want to get the manuals. So just before I go on to the last activity, which is really talking about what you might do in your practice, any more questions? We've done well, we've really covered everything. Okay, so implement and sustaining activities. So this is some of the research, influencing factors, older people and health professionals. How do we, so if we are more likely to sustain things for reasons because they're practical, they're not time consuming, there's all sorts of things. Whether it's how program can be adapted and how flexible it can be. So I always think life can be really flexible, and it can be culturally different, and it can be quite creative. Do you identify as someone who could do this program, or are you really someone a structured program? It doesn't need any money to do it, so it's one bonus, isn't it? But you might be like someone who might like to go along to exercise groups for social things, but maybe you might supplement it with life as well. So they might be some of the influencing factors. What can help? Professionals being trained, whether we plan for being sustainable. So you think about talking about, well, what happens when you go on holidays? What might happen? Well, maybe you could do some of the different activities. There's one thing with life, you can maintain it in some way. Going, while you might be doing it on yourself at home, maybe you and your partner might do it. So it might be that you can partner. Improving health professional capability, motivation and opportunity. I suppose we're thinking about health professionals here. I've got my head still on our clients. So this really was about what can help health professionals sustain it in their practice. So this is the questions that you have. You've got a sheet in your pile. How will you translate? Let's see how many things we can just jot down. So just some ideas about how you might use it in your practice. What might help you do it? Are there any barriers to doing life in your practice? And if there are, what could you do to overcome them? So just in your small group, have a bit of a discussion about coming up with some answers for those. Yeah, they've got that one? Yeah. So it's a little table in there. And then if you have some other ideas, we'll share a few of those just at the end. So have a go of... Amy will show you what it looks like. So it's nearly time to end. So we've just got a few minutes left for any questions and just a little bit of a feedback from some ideas. So we might just have a quick idea from each table. So it will, Alex is going around, if someone can volunteer just to make a comment about something that you discussed. Just a brief comment.
I think, is the microphone working?
Yep.
Yes, okay.
It's just my hearing.
Apparently I am. Oh, okay. Right.
And talk to the group.
Okay, to the group. Well, with the three of us here, we have one physio and two OTs. And I think a way this will influence specifically my practice is as a physio, you're used to going in and providing a home exercise program with pictures and explanations and a recipe and how many numbers, and it's very structured, very homework, and you know full well when you're writing this that a lot of you people are not going to do it. So I guess this is more that permission for those people, it gives, I can give myself permission to be a bit more varied and a bit more functional and a bit more OT-like. In my prescription. Yeah, what's that? Did you say it? How scary? Yeah, I know, one of us. So, yes, that's one.
I'll do it, Alex. Yeah, that's okay. Thank you. Someone from here? A quick comment
quickly,
to the group.
From Healthy Lifestyle. A few years ago, I attended a seminar on falls prevention, and one of the things that really stood out was when it was Margaret actually, Ganella. She said that falling.
Yeah. No.
So doing this to a chair is actually classified as a fall, and I use that with all my clients, and it really sticks. It really sticks. It's the one thing that they are so cautious of. That's apparently according to the World Health Organization. So I say that to them too. So I think if there's one thing that you can do and say that really works, stick with it. And from that little technique, it inspires them to continue on with their exercises.
So a tip. Okay, thanks, that's fine. Thank you. You poor thing, you've only got 2 to choose from.
We're both practice nurses, so we were just thinking that to implement it in our practice, we do over 75 health assessments on all our patients, so we thought it was just something that we could, we already ask about what exercise they do, but it's something that we could discuss these activities and even give them a printout or a demonstration how to do it, and that would be a way of ensuring that they learn some exercises to do themselves in an informal way.
Great. Thank you. So not just a screening tool, but actually doing something with it. Yeah, great. Anyone here would like to add a comment? Who's going to volunteer? Thank you. Sue.
I'm a practice nurse, and I was just talking about how I could integrate it into our over 75 checks as well. So that was a positive.
I'm going to implement it more into my exercise programs and the one-on-one exercises that I do with my residents. And we're also thinking we might do an obstacle course at work one day, like make it an 8-foot, like a falls prevention. But yeah, we can do a course where with the, is that what it's called? Yeah, like an obstacle course. We'll give it a whirl. Thank you.
Someone here about talking about implementing or barriers you can overcome or ideas, tips? Thank you.
My name's Joel, I'm an exercise physiologist. There's 2 physios on our table and 3 GPs. The GPs won out, so I'm going to speak on their behalf. The initial strategy was to link to falls prevention, especially if there's a client that's had several falls. And in addition to the one-on-one consult at the time, they'd refer to an exercise group or to a physiotherapist if it was available. What would help is having ready access to pictures to guide the activity, so they can quickly say, circle an activity and hand it on a sheet. A barrier is limited access to the patient, so they might not see that frequently. And an action to address the barrier will be involving the carer, upskilling them to be able to support the new activity.
Great. Thank you. And as we were saying earlier, Alex was saying earlier, in our iSolve project, we've actually developed a whole decision tool for GPs that involves referring, tailoring depending on the risk and how to do that. And that will be available as an online tool, and we'll be doing some more work in disseminating that more widely in the area over the next few months as well. So yeah, Amy is after the GPs. Beware. Someone got a tip here? Thank you.
I'm not sure who the risk group
exercise instructor, physio, OTs. I guess we were just talking because we both work for Healthy Lifestyle and do similar type of classes with people that are varying levels of mobility. For me, I think I'm used to giving people, like we were just talking about, an exercise sheet of exercises to take home, and my, three gold star exercises: side walking, sit-to-stand, and single leg balance, and try and do it during the breaks from our classes. But I think from this, I'm just going to try and, this is me personally thinking of just doing a month of just sit to stand and just get them to document what they're doing, just hone in on one exercise and really just, because when they come back, they're not as good as when they went, they had a couple of weeks off. Well, they're not as good, it's just that they don't seem to be exercising as often when they're away from the exercise. So maybe if I just work on that. Did you want to work anything else? No. So we were just talking about just bringing it to everyday, and probably not so stringent with the numbers and a bit more lifestyle. So thinking like an OT.
Thinking like an OT.
So when I'm working with sort of reconditioning type patients in a rehab hospital, we have the luxury of having a little kitchen that the patients can use. So rather than doing their balance practice at a rail facing a wall, I'm going to move it to the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then we'll get a bit of transfer across to their homes.
Yeah.
This isn't a day program. So,
good idea. Thank you. Anyone here I think we've finished every other group. Someone going to share something? Thank you.
We're a mixture of physios and OTs in community settings and hospital rehab settings. And I guess for us in hospital rehab settings, we spend a lot of time with our patients, our reconditioning patients, so we have lots of opportunity to just educate, speak to them, reinforce that it's got to be more functional and go through some of these things, which are great. We always give them a home exercise program that includes more static balance type things, but we'll now educate them to more functional balance. And I think the girls from Catholic Healthcare are going to educate their care workers who are going in the home all the time to try and reinforce it, to try and make changes to enable them to do the more functional type of things. For us, I guess the barriers to some of the things are a lot of our patients go home and they're on the cusp of being able to manage anyway, particularly in a cognitive sense, so cognition and getting to challenge their balance is not always a great mix, but that would be one of our particular challenges. And the girls were thinking maybe putting some signs around in the home would remind them to do those things, because the sign is always an orange sticker or whatever it might be. Any other? No,
that's good. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. So if you have any questions, I'll be around for a few minutes longer. I think we've come to the end of the day now. So thank you very much. You've been a great audience. And the best thing Jo and I always say is if you want to teach life, go and do it yourself. And really you'll get it then. And really get the idea of how you can embed it and how the challenges it does take to embed it, but also the gains that you can make from it. So thank you. Thank you.